We are plunging down into the absolute deepest, darkest, and most lethal part of our planet's oceans. We're looking at a place that flat out defies logic and a creature that literally defies physics. Okay, let's dive into this. Right off the bat, it sounds like a ridiculous riddle, doesn't it? How does a tiny fish survive airplane weight? But it's an incredibly real, completely mind-bending paradox. We're talking about an environment where the crushing pressure of millions of gallons of water is just an absolute constant reality. I mean, how does biology endure what would instantly crush solid steel? To give you a stark sense of this terrifying reality, let's look at human engineering versus nature's design. We all know the really tragic story of the modern Titan submarine, which suffered a catastrophic implosion at 4,000 meters deep. Yet, get this, there is a biological creature, the Mariana snailfish, that doesn't just visit, but naturally thrives at an astonishing 8,300 meters down. That is literally more than double the depth. Section 1. The ocean's deadliest depths. To even begin to understand this snailfish, we first need to understand its neighborhood. Located about 350 kilometers southwest of Guam, the Mariana Trench isn't just some tiny crack. It's a massive crescent-curved dent in the ocean floor. It stretches an incredible 250 kilometers in length and 69 kilometers in width. This sudden, violent plunge in the Earth's crust is so gigantically massive that you can clearly see the scar it leaves right on Google Earth. And deep within that massive trench lies the Challenger Deep. That's the absolute lowest point of the ocean floor, sitting at 11,033 meters straight down. This represents the ultimate, least explored extreme of our entire planet. It's honestly hard for our human brains to even comprehend that kind of vertical drop, and this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of 11,033 meters. If you took Mount Everest, the tallest peak on Earth, and dropped it right into the Mariana Trench, its summit wouldn't even poke out of the water. Actually, scratch that. It wouldn't even be close. It would still be completely submerged under miles of crushing ocean waves. Which brings us to the formal definition of this environment, the Hadal Zone. It's aptly named after Hades, the Greek god of the underworld. And honestly, it totally lives up to the name. Down there, you have lethal pressure, absolute zero sunlight, and a severe lack of traditional food sources. For centuries, the scientific community firmly believed this environment was utterly hostile, and that life existing here was scientifically impossible. Section 2. Define the Hadal Zone. But humans, we are famously stubborn creatures, and our curiosity has led to some pretty terrifying attempts to descend into this literal underworld. Let's follow the timeline here. Human curiosity really kicked off back in 1875 with the HMS Challenger. They tried to find the bottom just by dropping a heavily weighted rope over the side. Just imagine their sheer disbelief when the rope literally ran out before hitting the floor. Fast forward 85 years, to 1960, Jacques Piccard and Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh braved the descent in the manned Trieste submersible. And later, in 1996, the Kaiko robotic mission finally collected samples from the floor. But what's really, really interesting is that 1960 mission. Because during that 1960 Trieste mission, which was a grueling 10-hour round trip, they faced a literal living nightmare. At nearly 1,000 times surface pressure, the window of their submersible actually cracked. Yeah, that bone-crushing pressure nearly destroyed them, forcing them to abort and flee after spending barely 20 minutes at the bottom. But in those frantic 20 minutes, they witnessed something impossible. They saw a living fish swimming by. Section 3. Life without sunlight. So, how on Earth is life possible down there? Well, the 1996 Japanese robotic mission, Kaiko, was sent to find out. And what those physical samples revealed completely rewrote the textbooks. They discovered bizarre bacteria that survive through chemosynthesis. Up here on the surface, plants use sunlight for photosynthesis, right? But in the pitch-black Hadal Zone, these bacteria are generating their own energy using purely chemical reactions. Let's move to and see how this builds the foundation of life down there. Step 1. These extreme bacteria absorb carbon dioxide and minerals directly from the rocks. Step 2, under immense, high-pressure chemical reactions, they transform these materials. Step 3, they produce the energy and oxygen needed to fuel the entire deep-sea ecosystem. They are literally the base of the food chain in what should be an otherwise dead world. Section 4, the invincible snailfish.
Now let's zoom back in on our main subject. This is the creature living 8,300 meters down, where water pressure hits a staggering 16,000 psi. That's 7,250 kilograms pressing down on every single square inch. Keep those massive numbers in mind as you look at its physical dimensions. It is tiny, just 12 inches long, about 3 inches thick, with a total body surface area of barely 25 square inches. It looks so fragile, honestly almost like a piece of floating gelatin. But when you multiply that staggering water pressure by the surface area of this tiny creature, you get an unbelievable result: 170,000 kilograms. That is the constant, never-ending weight pressing down on this little fish's 25 square inch body 24/7.
Let me make that number feel real to you. 170,000 kilograms is slightly more than the weight of an empty Boeing 777 passenger jet. It's heavier than a massive railway locomotive. Just try to imagine an entire commercial airliner resting entirely on a creature the size of a standard desk ruler. It is an absolute biological miracle that it isn't instantly flattened into atoms.
Section 5. The Science of Survival.
So, how exactly does biology outsmart thousands of pounds of crushing physics? Well, the first major adaptation is actually subtraction. Normal surface fish have an organ called an air-filled swim bladder to control their buoyancy. But air compresses under pressure. If a surface fish goes too deep, that bladder crushes them from the inside out. The deep-sea snailfish completely ditch this organ. By having absolutely zero air spaces inside its body, it can sink safely into the abyss without imploding. But just having no air bladders isn't enough to stop the actual cellular proteins from crushing. And that brings us to a massive, recent scientific breakthrough: piezolites. These are highly concentrated organic molecules discovered inside these extreme deep-sea creatures. So the crucial point is that piezolites essentially act as a microscopic structural shield. Scientists found enormous quantities of these molecules packed inside the snailfish. They physically wedge themselves right into the cells, preventing the creature's delicate membranes and vital proteins from physically collapsing under all that extreme weight. But here's the wild part: the exact mechanical mystery of how they do this so flawlessly is still completely baffling researchers today. Nature, it seems, is keeping its blueprints heavily guarded. And solving that mystery is incredibly difficult because of one rather grim reality. We can't just catch them and study them in a normal lab. You see, the snailfish's body is so perfectly engineered to push outward against extreme pressure that if you bring it up to the surface, the sudden lack of ocean pressure causes the fish to literally explode. Yeah, surface analysis of a living specimen is just totally impossible with our current methods. Which leaves us with this final, truly thrilling question. If a tiny fish can evolve to effortlessly carry the weight of a commercial jetliner in complete darkness, what else is hiding down there in the Hadal Zone? What other biological miracles are swimming around in the abyss, just waiting for human technology to catch up?